Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And if it's an extensive response, we might just say, you know, we'll follow up because we want to respect people's time. So that's why
Yeah, sometimes.
Yes. Yes, yep. I should probably turn that.
Ben is giving me the thumbs up that he's good.
Yep, we're good to go.
Start? Okay, friends, I'm going to call this town hall to order this evening at 6 p.m. I want to welcome you here tonight, and you know what, actually, I'm going to pull rank and have us start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you can join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Mayor Brian Marl, and I am joined by most of my council colleagues this evening. To my left would be Mayor Pro Tem Janet Dillon. She can raise her hand, along with council members Rice, Gearbaugh, Kamara Sulak, and then in the audience is my council colleague Jack Seal. Just a few ground rules this evening, and I know I don't have to say this, but I feel compelled to, because we're all aware that there have been some community forums in recent years that have gone off the rails. Individuals have been deeply hurt by actions and statements that have been made, and conversely, those events have reflected poorly on our community. So, a few ground rules this evening. There will be a presentation conducted by the city manager, city treasurer, police chief, and our guests from Washtenaw County Metro Dispatch. Then there will be time for a Q&A. You will be limited to 3 minutes per person. I will be timing you. We'll ask you that you come to the podium this evening. You can raise questions, concerns, or make comments about consolidation of dispatch into Washtenaw Metro or the preservation of dispatch here at Saline PD. Obviously, there will be no hateful language tolerated, no interruptions. Please be respectful and be mindful that we might not all agree, but we're all here because we have the city's best interest at heart. I do want to clarify just for a moment. So the genesis for this investigation or our research into consolidating into Metro Dispatch was largely guided by a fund balance policy that my colleagues and I helped to spearhead back in 2013. And I'll say this, I believe very strongly that every successful, well-managed municipality should have a fund balance policy that mirrors that of the city of Saline. Regardless of whether you're the city of Detroit, city of Grand Rapids, a full-service municipality, or a rural township like Lima or Sharon Township. And our fund balance policy does a few things. One, it outlines that our fund balance here at the city of Saline should be somewhere in the range of between 15 and 20% of our revenue. If it exceeds that dollar amount, it stipulates how those funds can be spent, i.e. to pay down pension and a healthcare liability, along with investing dollars, critical dollars, into our vital infrastructure. Conversely, if the dollar amount dips below 15, staff, specifically the city manager and city treasurer, are compelled to develop a corrective action plan to get the fund balance back to 15 to 20%. And so dispatch, along with a number of other services and programs, are being looked at for consolidations and cost savings. And that would include leaf collection, mowing, the contributions that we make to downtown Saline, among a variety of other things, so passport services included. So that provides you a little bit of context to why we're here this evening. Again, we welcome you. We look forward to your questions and your comments. I'm going to turn it over to City Manager O'Toole, who will introduce the panel and our guests. When they conclude with their presentation, again, we'll entertain public comments, questions, concerns. You will have 3 minutes, and I will time you. And I think our goal this evening, because we have several folks who need to get to subsequent meetings, is to get you out of here by about 7 o'clock. Is that correct?
Correct. We do have a hard stop. We're asking anyone, if we aren't able to get to all the questions tonight, we will have our contact information available, and they can submit questions to us after the fact.
Any questions for me? And I'm mindful that I'm a real fast talker, so I threw a lot at you in a very short period of time. But I'm trying to be respectful of your schedules this evening. Okay, that's all you, City Manager O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Marl. So very quickly, I'll introduce. To my left is City Treasurer Al Cole. To my right is Police Chief Marlene Radzik. From the county, we have Rochelle Noonan, Director of Emergency Services, and Jeff Poinier. I apologize, Jeff, your exact title?
You nailed it. And Dispatch Operations Manager.
Thank you. So we'll have two presentations. One on the city side, we're going to focus the first part of this presentation on just addressing some common misconceptions that we've seen out there in the community so far, and then we'll hand it over to our friends at Metro Dispatch to talk a little bit more about what exactly it is they do, who the partners are, and how they work. So let's start addressing some of those common concerns. The big one that we've heard is, the question of who will be available in the event of a non-emergency or after hours at City Hall. Well, I can assure you our police officers will remain fully accessible to residents in an emergency or otherwise. Metro Dispatch, very similar to the city, does offer a non-emergency number for residents. As part of the transition process that city officials would go through if we were to select moving forward with this, we would identify what those types of services are that we want to continue to provide to residents. And I expect that there would be no real change in the level of services we provide. So that concept of kind of losing your small town officer is really a fallacy. We would continue to offer the same level of support and services we do both through emergency and through that non-emergency line. For example, if a resident witnesses a suspicious activity or a water main break, again, it's really just about us setting clear policies and protocols for how those would be addressed with our partners at Metro Dispatch so that they know who our contacts are and how they will respond. We would also commit to installing a call push button. This is something that many other communities have adopted when they made the transition to Metro Dispatch. This is an opportunity to connect directly with Metro Dispatch on the front of our building. So if you need to contact an officer after hours physically here for some reason, that opportunity does still exist. But I will note, in a real emergency, we would always advise residents, please don't come to City Hall, call 911. Let our emergency response professionals get you the resources that you need. If dispatch services were regionalized, the city is also considering whether or not we would extend service hours at City Hall. This isn't really a common practice with most other communities, but it is something the City Council has asked that we explore. So something like this could be accomplished through a community support position, which may actually even allow us to expand services to residents because we could cross-train that individual with other departments like finance or the clerk's department. So if that did move forward, that may actually be a benefit in terms of the service availability of Saline staff. Another thing that we've heard is, the concern about will City Hall continue to be available as a warming or cooling center or available for after-hours events, and both of those things are absolutely still true. So for context now, the warming and cooling center is this room that you are all in. We do not operate it 24/7 in the event that we do need to use it as a warming or cooling center. We don't set it up for overnight accommodations, so that wouldn't change with any transition. It'd still be available during regular business hours and probably extended business hours, again, just based on setting up some additional policies and procedures for how we would operate that. So again, there's clearly been a little bit of maybe fear-mongering on social media. We want to get ahead of that and let folks know we are not anticipating, and if a change was made, we would make sure that that contract was built in a way that all of the services that our police officers currently provide are still available to residents of this community. Another concern that we've heard The question of can Metro Dispatch handle the calls as effectively as our local dispatch? And one thing we'll say is neither organization responds more quickly than the other. They're both agencies that are highly professional and process calls immediately as they received. In fact, if you're a cell phone user right now, which based on the data we found, conservatively, at least 86% of people probably are, your calls actually route to Metro Dispatch before they ever even come to Saline. So a switch to Metro Dispatch would effectively streamline that service. The county also, simply put, it just has more resources available to serve our existing needs. They have an exceptional state-of-the-art facility and really a much bigger training budget than the city could ever hope to put towards its existing staff. I don't think anyone up here would suggest that either is a more or less professional organization. They're both full of exceptional people who do exceedingly well at their job. So the question of will officers have more tasks to handle and will they be on the road less as a result? We can say quite confidently any administrative tasks that are being handed off to officers are going to be relatively minor in terms of the time commitment to them personally. And frankly, from what we understand and the chief has shared with me, these are very normal responsibilities in comparable communities for officers to take on. The duties that would be transferred are very commonly the duties of officers in other jurisdictions, and really most of the duties that we're talking about that are non-dispatch related or directly picking up and responding in emergencies could be transferred to police administration, certainly if we create a community resource position, as well as some other police staff who may be able to help us with the load. And in some cases, absolutely. We may have to limit the hours that certain services are available to the hours that City Hall is open. So one other thing I think is important to note here is under our current operations, because the city has not been able to fully staff its dispatch services from some time, we frequently have to utilize police staff to fill shifts. And then this is not a typical responsibility of police staff in other jurisdictions. So a shift to Metro Dispatch would allow our sergeants especially to focus more exclusively and wholly on the responsibilities of being a police administrator and not have to work that double duty overseeing dispatch. In our conversations with communities that have made the shift, we did not hear any comments about the change being unduly burdensome to other staff or resulting in traffic stops. So we have no reason to believe that that's going to directly result in less time on the road. And frankly, being in their car is going to be the best place to be in terms of receiving that information from dispatch. Really, everything about this process, this part of the process, there's best practice standards for now. Several other communities have gone through this. We're not reinventing the wheel. There's really good, strong internal policies and procedures for us to follow. On the question of how personal Metro Dispatch will be and whether they know you and your unique situations, I know some people have had very personal experiences with our dispatch center. I think our friends at Metro Dispatch will be the first to say, yeah, to some degree, personalization may be lost in that kind of switch. It's a higher level professional organization with a very, very tight focus on emergency response and the best practice in emergency response. But they are well trained to handle all calls effectively and safely. What they have is also the benefit of using the same system that we currently use for tracking past accidents, and that's Clemens CAD. Just like Saline Police or Saline dispatchers handle our calls now, they'll have notes about your past calls, your personal incident history, all ready and available for them when they take your call. So that means that the user experience for our officers is going to be relatively the same as well. They're going to see that same information that they're used to seeing now in the same format. We would hope it's also possible that some of our dispatchers will make the move to Metro. It's been mixed results in other communities when they've made the transition, and ultimately it's up to the individual dispatchers whether they want to make that move or not. But Metro Dispatch does have a deep roster, and in a multi-location or multi-party emergency, they have a greater depth of team to respond than we currently have available to us. I think from what I've learned about this situation, Metro Dispatch will learn everything that they need to know to create a safe situation for you and any responding personnel, because that's their job. Whether they know you personally or not is no way going to diminish their ability to excel at their job, but really rather ensures that every caller is treated with an equal degree of deference to their unique circumstances. On the question of who would monitor the building or parking lots at City Hall, Saline Dispatch does currently monitor the cameras at City Hall fairly actively. If we move to a Metro Dispatch, that's not a service that they would necessarily provide, so the city would have to adopt a practice of passive monitoring, probably using something like interval check-ins by administrators on duty. Again, that's just a matter of setting up the right policies and procedures to ensure that we have the coverage we need. But relatively speaking, activities here at City Hall after hours are generally limited to community events like this. There's not a whole ton of foot traffic coming in and out of our building. And a change like this would be very consistent with what we've seen of other communities across Washtenaw County who do not actively surveil their municipal assets. So is Metro Dispatch a good fit for our community? Well, I mean, Saline has excellent dispatchers. We have excellent services now. And we completely understand, you know, for the members of our team, our colleagues, it's completely understandable that they don't want to lose that relationship. You know, change is harder for some people than others. We get that. But the reality is that participation in Metro Dispatch has been very well received by the departments who have made the switch. Their services would afford our officers an even greater depth of knowledge because their experience goes well beyond what we experience here in Saline. Metro's commitment to best practice safety procedures is also a benefit to our team. It's a benefit that, you know, there's a benefit that comes with being on the same radio channel as our neighbors because criminals don't really pay attention to jurisdictional authorities. There have certainly been occasions in the past where having that connection would have benefited our staff in preparing to address, you know, for a police chase, for example. So while our genesis for looking into outsourcing came from that financial need, that fund balance policy that Mayor Morrow referenced, the fact is that as we continue to do due diligence, more and more benefits were identified. There are tangible wins in terms of risk mitigation, emergency preparedness, and of course, financial resiliency. The city does not just generate a high enough call volume to justify maintaining a service of this level when there's an opportunity for an economies of scale and operational efficiency in moving to regionalized services. The alternative, obviously, you know, is that we continue to try and manage our own in-house dispatch service, but there may be risks to the community of doing that if we are understaffed and underprepared, certainly through no fault of the staff that exists now, but underprepared nonetheless to deploy large-scale emergency response resources in a major emergency. So, you know, risk mitigation is a very serious topic for the city of Saline. We have a dedicated task force that looks at topics of risk mitigation, and that is something that has emerged throughout this process as an opportunity to really shore up a potential risk within our community. So looking at financial resiliency, safety, and risk reduction, Metro Dispatch really stands out as an opportunity for us to touch on some of those points. So Saline is currently one of only 2 municipalities in the county not affiliated with dispatch services. All the other communities have successfully navigated the use to regional services, and there's really no reason to believe that we could not do the same with equal success if we follow those best practice standards. This conversation keeps coming up because it continues to be a recommendation. In fact, as far back as 2015, it has been an outside recommendation of operational assessments for the city that we consider outsourcing dispatch services. We know that our existing facilities, our existing staff levels would be pretty quickly overwhelmed in a multi-location or multi-victim incident. For example, a natural disaster or multi-car accident. And having to coordinate outside support, that's another level that we're just not always prepared for. We don't have as deep of a bench. So this was a real life experience, an example that we heard talking with our colleagues in Milan. Part of the reason that they considered the switch to Metro followed the pretty extreme weather event that they had about maybe a year and a half ago now, I think. You know, from a risk mitigation standpoint, the position of my office, at least, is I really don't want us to have to wait for that to happen to us as well. The Saline Police Department is no different than many other policing agencies or dispatch agencies. We're suffering from a historic understaffing levels. It's a very competitive job market. There's fewer individuals interested in the line of work. So, from a regional standpoint, we see value in not competing with Metro Dispatch as an employer any longer, but instead joining with them. Certainly their agency has some pretty competitive benefits to offer and a lot more opportunities for early career professionals that we just cannot provide here. By partnering with the county, we also hope to strengthen, again, that regional collaboration between our partners who, everyone who surrounds us is currently on Metro Dispatch. Right now, Saline operates like an island, which again is something we heard when we spoke with our friends in Milan, that that switch really made a difference to be on the same team as opposed to be operating in our own silo. Certainly our sincere hope also is that some of our dispatchers will make that move, because we think we have some excellent dispatchers and we'd like to share them with the broader community. Their skills are very welcomed. Ultimately, it costs the city about $350,000 annually out of our general fund to operate dispatch services now, $300,000 to $350,000. That's only about offset by roughly $37,000 that comes from a telecom fee. So there's no separate or dedicated funding source that covers this service. That means that the funding for this service comes at an opportunity cost to other programming under the general fund. And the general fund really encompasses pretty much everything that isn't water, wastewater, or streets. So that's other police services, other public safety activities, fire services, stormwater management, public works, you name it. Pretty much anything else that you can think of in terms of a municipal service that in some way touches our general fund. Certainly there's no shortage of good ideas about how to improve our community, but all those asks always require some commitment of dollars, and we need to be extremely, extremely mindful of the best uses of taxpayer dollars. So the question always comes up, if not this, then what? And I think this is a very real chance for our community to reduce our recurring costs while still providing an exceptional level of service. And that type of opportunity just doesn't exist in other places. So what comes next? Sorry, last point there. One other thing that we heard, recurring theme in the communities that we talked to, officer safety was cited by other jurisdictions as an exceptional benefit of making the switch, and we see a real value to that. Next steps. So the first part of this process was the administrative review that was triggered as part of that fund balance policy. We're now kind of at step 2, where we're soliciting public input and providing education on what that switch would look like. Moving forward, the next step would be to coordinate a potential scope of services with our colleagues at the county, and then ultimately have council consider and vote on a service contract. All in all, the process, even if it was resolved today, we're still probably looking at a year before a transition was made. So there is ample notice, ample time for all those policies and procedures that I referenced to be created, for us to develop those best practice standards and start putting them in place. Chief, if you'd like to introduce our guests from Metro Dispatch.
Sure. We're taking questions at the end, so to be a good custodian of everybody's time, I'll just turn this over to the Director of Emergency Services, Rochelle Noonan.
Good evening, everybody. As Chief introduced me, my name is Rochelle Noonan. I'm the Emergency Services Director for the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. Just to give you a little bit of a background, I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 20 years. All 20 of my years and experience has been with the Dispatch Center. I've served in every position of the Sheriff's Office within the Dispatch Center. So first as a dispatcher and call taker, a trainer, a shift leader, a dispatch supervisor, the manager, and then now the director. With me here is Jeff Poinier, the manager. Go ahead, Jeff.
I've been with the Sheriff's Office for just under 16 years, following the same career path as Rochelle, without that last step.
But first of all, before we get into the presentation, I just would really like to thank everybody for coming out. It's actually really comforting seeing the passion that people have for their local 911 center. 911 is something I've been passionate about for 20 plus years, so it's really comforting to see that the city of Saline residents feel the same way. So why are we here? Why is Metro Dispatch here at your town hall? The sheriff's office was approached by Saline as to what a dispatch contract would look like. We, as the county of Washtenaw, have a duty and obligation to serve all citizens of Washtenaw County. As previously mentioned, we presented to City Council in January, and then were requested to come back this evening to the Town Hall. There has been a lot of information circulating the last couple weeks. Hopefully, we can clarify a little bit of that for you today. But our main goal here is to answer any questions that you have specific to Metro Dispatch operations. We recognize that change is uncomfortable. That's just something natural that comes with uncertainty and change. But I can assure you, I've been through this several times with the City of Ypsilanti, the City of Ann Arbor, Pittsfield Township Police Department, Milan Police Department, and then now, obviously, introductory conversations with Saline. The end goal, I think we all have the same goal in mind, is to provide the best possible customer service to the citizens, visitors, and first responders for all of Washtenaw County. Just to take you through a brief overview of Metro Dispatch, we are the largest public safety, or primary public safety answering point in Washtenaw County. We dispatch for law enforcement only. We provide 911 dispatch services for 10 law enforcement agencies, serving 96% of Washtenaw County's residential population. Since 1990s, dispatch has been serving the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office, the Michigan State Police, and Northfield Township Police. In the mid-90s, they acquired DNR and Metro Parks. Then in 2010, the City of Ypsilanti. In 2012, we established Metro Dispatch after the consolidation of Ann Arbor and the Sheriff's Office Dispatch Center co-located, and ultimately Ann Arbor began contracting with the Sheriff's Office for dispatch services. In 2018, Pittsfield Township Police began contracting. 2020, this is Washtenaw Community College. It's a little bit different because it's a university, or it's a college there, so on-campus calls go to their public safety, but if you're dialing 911, cell phone-wise, that's going to come to us, so their officers still check in with us on the main channel, so there's no delay in dispatch, and if we receive any 911 calls, we dispatch WCC immediately. And then the most recent one was Milan back in July of 2022. So while we only dispatch for police, we still are the primary answering point there for all 911. So if it's a fire or medical request, we transfer it over to a secondary PSAP, and most often here in Washtenaw County, it's HVA. This is a map of Washtenaw County just to illustrate. We do not dispatch for the City of Chelsea. We do not dispatch for the City of Saline, University of Michigan, or Eastern Michigan. All the rest of the county is dispatched by Washtenaw County's Metro Dispatch Center. Just a little bit of an overview. This is a little elementary, but to just illustrate that we have multiple staff on working every shift, 5 to 8 individuals, depending on the hour of the day. So a citizen calls 911, they get a call taker. The call taker enters the information into what is called a CAD screen. Simultaneously, as they're entering that information, the dispatcher pulls it up. We don't have to wait, there's no delay. It's similar to Saline's dispatch software as well, where the dispatcher pulls it up right away. The call taker may even still be on the phone gathering additional information while the dispatcher is sending the units out. So there's not a call taker dispatcher delay because it's not just a one-person center. That information is received consistently. If the call needs to be transferred over to HVA or fire, it is. The dispatcher will then send the responding jurisdiction and then certainly check in with our lean operator if there's any information that needs to be run. The Emergency Services Communication Center is centrally located in Washtenaw County. We opened the doors in December of 2021, so we've been operating out of our new center for about 14, 15 months now. It was built and designed with room to grow. We weren't going to spend, millions of taxpayer dollars for only to be able to handle what we're doing right now. That would be financially irresponsible. So it was built to take on potential other centers, whether it's police, fire, medical. As I said earlier, there's 5 to 8 staff members depending on the hour of day. We handle approximately 1,000 emergency and non-emergency calls daily. We receive and process over 250,000 calls for service annually for all the agencies combined. And our radio operations is split into 2 main channels, Metro East and Metro West. It provides better dispatcher to officer ratio to keep better tabs on the officers and officer safety. This is a lengthy list of partnerships and resources that we engage with at least on a weekly basis, if not daily. Little bit of information as far as contracting with the Sheriff's Office Metro Dispatch Center regarding scope of services. We obviously would be handling emergency calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Law enforcement dispatching, the same. Same thing with Lean and CIC. That's the Lean operator running individuals and vehicles, making sure individuals don't have warrants, vehicles being stolen, valid drivers, missing persons, all those kind of databases. We also would be administration of PSEP training funds received to support dispatch operations and the dispatchers, SNC, State 911 Committee designated telecommunicator status by State of Michigan, training requirements for the State of Michigan. I'm sure Saline dispatchers are just as qualified and trained. It's the State of Michigan implemented this several years ago. Contracting with the Sheriff's Office would be responsible for furnishing all materials and labor necessary to take and dispatch the city's police emergency calls. We would be treating emergency calls for the city the same, equal priority to the other agencies that we dispatch for in the county. We'd be providing the city with CAD information regarding emergency police calls received, and then share with the city all complaints received regarding any internal, external calls for service as far as complaints go and on how those calls were handled. And then any other services agreed to by the parties. Something that we began implementing in July of 2012 when we started dispatching for the city of Ann Arbor was performance metrics and quality assurance program. So there's various information and reports that are gathered both monthly, quarterly, and annually. And we gather this information and then disseminate it to the agencies that contract with us. So monthly reports, you can see a list there, but basically it's the call volume of 911 and the Metro Dispatch total call volume, the length of time that it takes for us to actually answer the call when it rings into the center, calls for service, speed to dispatch the calls, and how long it takes for the dispatcher to call arrival once they actually were dispatched on the call. We also send out surveys to the command officers for the agencies that we dispatch for. They fill out the surveys and submit them back. Same thing with citizens that call 911. They're randomly sampled and people are actually calling. It's not an email. People actually call, engage with the citizens that have called 911, survey them. That information is gathered and then disseminated quarterly as well. Also is the complaint summary. Additionally, we host quarterly quality assurance meetings with our contracting partners to identify any issues. That could be policy, it could be procedural changes, it could be new state laws, it could be new driver status information, but we host those meetings and the agencies come, we talk about just roundtable information. Metro Dispatch meets or exceeds National Emergency Number National Number Association, which is NENA, call standards. The standard is that 95% of all 911 calls shall be answered within 20 seconds. In 2021, we were at 99.2%, and in 2022, we're at 99.4%. Every single month, like I said, July 2012 is when we started doing these performance metrics. We began tracking these. We've exceeded the national standard every single month since July of 2012. As stated earlier, the earliest contract execution that we could do is first quarter of 2024, and mainly that is because we're actively hiring communications operators. Last year alone, we had 5 retirements and 1 promotion, so that left us several vacancies. We currently are actively training 3, and we still have 5 vacancies. 2 are currently in the background phase. We have several more applicants at various stages throughout the hiring process. Additionally, we are midway of hiring a dispatch consultant who are going to help us develop our 10-year strategic plan based around national best practices, the Sheriff's Office mission, operational philosophy, and even just assessing our current operations and then feasibility of future growth. So why have agencies contracted with the Sheriff's Office historically in the past? Financial reasons. Staffing, difficult to staff their own center, technology, equipment, difficulty maintaining the state training standards, sending the dispatchers to training, backfilling the spot. Also, the profession of 911 dispatch is really evolving, and it really is needing their own policy and procedures and not just under the umbrella of police services anymore. Love the fact that our profession is being more nationally recognized as a profession, but with that comes specific policy and procedure as it pertains to 911 professionals. We have the ability, because we have the staffing, to handle multiple emergencies simultaneously. It can be multiple emergencies on both east and west simultaneously as well. And then just the experience and frequency of handling those priority incidents. As indicated earlier, shared radio talk groups, not just of the units, in the county on the same channel, but also the neighboring jurisdictions. There's no delay in then going through multiple dispatch centers, trying to find the closest backup. And then situational awareness has probably been the biggest benefit. Shortly after we began dispatching for Ypsilanti City, they had a stolen vehicle in the city. As we were dispatching the Ypsi City officer to take the stolen vehicle report, the units that were working in Ypsilanti Township for the sheriff's office at the time heard that go out because it's on the same radio channel. They found that stolen vehicle, pulled it over before Ypsi City was even able to respond to the complainant to take that stolen vehicle report. Similar situation happened actually just last year where Ypsilanti Township had an armed robbery of a bank, set off the tones, sent the units out there, and Pittsfield Police had the armed robber pulled over in their vehicle with several units, took him into custody without incident. I know there's been a lot of conversation about the ice storm recently, the big storm I think we're all familiar with, February 22nd. Just to give you a little bit of context, the day before the storm, we received 381 911 calls, which is about 16 calls an hour. The day of the storm, that 24-hour period, we received 1,975 calls, 82 911 calls an hour. But if you really draw down on the peak hours of the storm from 2 p.m. to midnight, 1,768 calls, which is 177 911 calls an hour. Did we miss a 911 call or two? Absolutely, because I did not have 177 911 call takers to handle every single one of those calls when they came in. The vast majority of these calls were a result of down wires, trees down, power outages, and fire as a result of the power issues. MLive reported that this was the thickest and most severe ice storm that we've had in 50 years. Over 65,000 customers were without power in Washtenaw County, close to 40% of the population. So there were a couple other additional reasons for that influx of calls. DT reportedly quit answering calls and updated their messaging to call 911 to notify 911 of the power outages. So you can believe what that did to our center. No power means no landline, which means cell phone calls are routing to Metro Dispatch. Any large-scale incident such as this weather-related incident, an active killing, or mass casualty incident such as an airplane or a train crash will overwhelm a dispatch center of any size. It doesn't matter if you're a 1-person center, a 10-person center, or a 50-person center. But a larger dispatch center generally has more resources to plan for, call upon, and staff for an incident such as this magnitude. These are just a couple of pictures of our current center. We have 18 positions you see in the bottom left corner there. And this is a bottom right corner, just a zoom up of a position in a video wall that has various traffic cameras on it. I'll start for questions.
Thank you. So we would like to open it up now for questions. Again, we're limiting comments or questions to 3 minutes per person. Mayor Marl will be keeping time for us, but anyone who would like to comment or question is welcome to do so at the podium.
Please come to the podium. Please make sure the green light is illuminated at the base. I will be keeping time of 3 minutes. You will know when your 3 minutes is up because I'm using a buzzer here, and there will be a ringtone when 3 minutes has eclipsed. So we welcome your questions, comments, concerns. I do want to follow up on just one item real quick before we get to your questions. When City Manager O'Toole talked about next steps, I do not have a date certain at this juncture as to when City Council will debate or vote on this issue. I would suspect it will probably be done sometime in the next 60 to 90 days. But I strongly encourage folks who are interested in anything that's being discussed or considered before City Council to log into minutes, documents on demand, which can be found on our city's website. It will give you updates on City Council meetings. It will also provide you council agendas and all the support material that's provided to my colleagues. If you have any questions about that, you may direct those to City Clerk Royal. She can be reached by phone or email. She'd be delighted to address any questions, concerns you have. So now, as it pertains to Saline Dispatch or consolidating into Metro Dispatch, we would welcome your comments. You will be limited to 3 minutes. And I think my colleagues and I would love to hear your name and if you're a resident or if you work in the community or any other relevant information. Please. And we will try to, between our guests from the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office, the Police Chief, City Treasurer, and City Manager, we will try to respond to your questions in real time. So when you're done with your remarks, we will try to respond thoughtfully if you asked, or if you articulated, the questions. Mary, please begin and make sure that green light is illuminated at the base, because we are recording.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Mary Hess, and I am a citizen of the city of Saline for over 60 years. I was wondering, and I had asked, could this come to a vote of the taxpayers of the city since they are footing the bill? I was told, and they had said tonight, that the council would vote on this. And the council is of 7, but our population, there is many, many things to where I think that if the taxpayers want to put out this $350,000, I guess they should have a vote on it. And one of the other things, Mayor, that you didn't, that might be in jeopardy would be our rec center too, as far as when the costs are doing. You were talking about meetings with the staff, with the county, and I was wondering if there's any kind of meetings that are citizens board, because the citizens, of course, are the ones that have asked for this concern tonight and very active on the internet. But I think that it is important to consider a citizens board too down the road to help relay concerns. The county requests Saline Police many times for township help, but I don't know that we ever give the taxpayers the amount of hours that are used in township, and I'm sure that would still be so. My concern is hopefully that this might, if in fact this could go to a vote of the people, of the taxpayers that pay for this, and if it would be contemplated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess.
Certainly happy to respond. So the services that we are considering are contract services, so it would be an operational change within the City of Saline's portfolio. It's not practice to go to a vote of the public for operational changes. Certainly, if council made the decision to not contract for services, we would need to identify a funding source for that need. And at that time, I can say pretty clearly it would be my recommendation to council that they consider a millage to support, if it is their intent, to support the existing operations of Saline Dispatch Services. So it would have to be funded through its own separate millage. I think there are a few other questions in there. So, Mary, my office is always available if you want to drop by.
Do you want to, because my faux pas, I failed to mention this in my opening remarks. Do you want to provide an obligatory comment about the rec center? Because obviously that is another focus as we attempt to grow our fund balance.
Absolutely. So the operations of the rec center are primarily funded through a separate fund, the Rec Complex Fund. The dollars that we're talking about today come out of the city's general fund. So those dollars don't tend to mingle. There is a small portion of the general fund that historically we've contributed to help at the rec center. I believe in FY24 we have maybe 25,000 roughly earmarked, not not a major portion in the context of operations that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But yes, the rec center largely is funded through its own operations. And the fund balance policy that was specifically referenced at the beginning of this is in relation to the general fund. Again, that catch-all fund for the majority of our municipal portfolio. That is the fund that, because of its diminishing fund balance, and again, really through no financial impropriety of council or any past staff, really just the reality of inflation over the last 2 years has really eaten into the fund balance, and we need to identify an opportunity to stymie that trend and move in the right direction.
Thank you. Additional citizen comments. We welcome your thoughts or questions this evening. We will have 3 minutes. Please. No, it's all you.
Okay, your point gets ready if you're pointing, John. Hello, my name's Chris Bolter. I'm a sergeant with the Saline Police Department. Real quick, I am here on my own behalf, not as a representative of the department. I do have a few issues with everything I saw. One, I never saw the city present any reasons why to keep dispatch. It seemed to me like it was just a why to get rid of it, which is a little troubling to me. But one of the concerns I have is it talks about the likely city manager, likely most efficient in terms of staffing. However, the county did present that they only have 11 out of 18 positions, which by my calculations is 240 hours roughly overtime a week at the. How often do you guys have deputies sit in there? Because they had mentioned that we do have police officers sit in the desk, and we do. That's part of our operations. That's a planned event, and that does not result in any shortage of officers on the road, nor does it result in, it results in very, very limited amount of overtime for that position. But I do know that you guys have deputies that sit in there frequently, and I'm curious if the deputies are designated under the SNC, if they've gone through all that training. So that's one of the questions I have. Another question is, you brought up the ice storm. I can tell you from my own experience, during the ice storm, Central Dispatch was essentially shut down. We had people coming down from the townships, calling in. They were stopping in. I myself actually had to go to the fire department personally to hand them a piece of paper with areas countywide, including the city, that had places down. When I spoke with a high-ranking official over there and said, hey, I'm here because people are reporting the county are not answering their phones, their response was, yeah, they're not answering for us either. During that ice storm, our dispatch was able to coordinate directly with DPW to immediately get people out there. And I'm not saying the county wouldn't be able to do that, because you guys do a great job with what you have. I will give you credit for that. But they were able to coordinate directly with DPW to get roads open, to get lines cleared so the fire department could get in there to help people in, and to get roads closed that couldn't be closed. Being overwhelmed in emergency, they're not going to be able to coordinate with our DPW for the safety of the public. The concern was the little bit of foot traffic we have now, and that is a concern. We don't have a lot of foot traffic now, but we do have enough, and when we do, it matters. It's about the stalking victims who come in the middle of the night. Do you want them talking to a basically drive-through window box, or do you want them talking to a person? We've had people come in at all hours where we can immediately lock the door so these people can feel safe. It's about the LGBTQ plus person who came in 2 to 3 years ago, 2, 3 in the morning. That person was being followed. They were scared for their life. They thought they were being followed because of their lifestyle. As a parent of a member of that community, it troubles me again to think that if my daughter was being chased by somebody who felt in danger, that she was going to have to run up and hit a drive-through window box and wait for someone to answer the phone. It's about the non-English speaking families that car broke down downtown in the middle of the night and needed a place to stay until they could get somebody there to come to help them. It's about the guy that came running into the dispatch several years ago thinking he was shot. It was actually a part of a lawnmower flew off and hit him, but it was about having somebody there. My time's up. I will talk at the council meeting and address the cost, because I do have figures on that. And will you save money? Yeah, you may in the first 4 years, or whatever the duration of your contract is, but like Ann Arbor, you're going to get hit with a larger bill later. You may save money up front, but my question is really going to be truly at what cost. So I'll be quiet now, but I'm more than happy to answer questions for anybody afterwards or any other time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bolter. I got 3 questions there. So one would be, or at least 2 would be for Metro Dispatch, whether officers, sheriff's deputies sit in Metro. If you want to comment a little bit more on the recent ice storm. And then there was a question or concern about the potential for coordinating with other divisions within our municipal portfolio, specifically the Department of Public Works or Utilities during an emergency event.
So first of all, you said something else that was a little troubling to me. I wasn't quite sure where you got the numbers of 11 and 18 from. We have 18 positions down in dispatch. That's 18 consoles. We're designated for 32 full-time employees, and we have 27 of those positions filled. We have 5 openings. So hopefully that part clarifies for you.
Yeah, that was from your January meeting, you had said in January.
We had 7 open then, and we have 5 now.
Right, that's where I got those numbers, so.
Okay.
Just to be clear, it was from you.
Yep. Well, you said 11 and 18, so I'm clarifying the 18
Correct.
console
Yeah, what I'm
positions.
saying is, when you were here in January, you said you had 11 team positions, and I guess at that point, the confusion was you had 18 like seats, basically. I thought that was positions, meaning like staffing level positions.
Sure, I understand.
That's what you said there, so I
Yep.
appreciate that clarification.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're only down 5 right now?
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct. And as far as the deputies who work in dispatch, yes, they are designated. They follow the same SNC training standards, and they have to work in dispatch a minimum of 12 hours to keep their skill set up.
12 hours per month.
12 hours a month, yeah.
Somebody want to comment on the potential for coordinating with other agencies within our municipal portfolio, specifically during emergency events? So he brought up the concern about connecting with DPW or utility department, et cetera.
Yes, I think part of that was, so I think the ice storm in particular, there was a couple different issues there. Number one, our center was just overwhelmed with 911 calls, obviously. Number two, the vast majority of those were for fire response, so we transfer those to HVA. They too were overrun, so we can't pick up that next call until that first one is answered. So while we're waiting for HVA to pick up one call, it's difficult to get to the next because that first one is still ringing. As far as working with DPW, is that the other part of that? I think that would be something that would be discussed as far as scope of services moving forward. I'm not sure what that fully entails.
Yeah, if you want to speak.
Sure, I mean, having knowledge of what happened during that ice storm, that was somewhat of an anomaly. I mean, Rochelle even stated, that was the worst storm in 50 years. If the patrol officers are out on the road, this is going to be a policy decision on how we notify DPW, a non-emergency, or an emergency phone number and who gets contacted. Just like, I mean, Sergeant Bolter did do a phenomenal job running over to the fire department and giving that information. But if you're out on the road, I don't see why or how it would be too difficult for us to still contact DPW, their on-call list, and coordinate with the fire department. You know, we're 3.4 square miles. I think it would be feasible to do.
Absolutely. I mean, all this is a matter of best practice standards and procedures, making sure that Metro Dispatch is aware of what our contact expectations are, making sure that our team is aware of our response obligations in those events. Again, really just putting the correct policies and procedures in place like we have now. You know, the reason that we responded the way that we did is because we have those procedures in place. All it really takes is training on new procedures in that event.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments this evening? Please come to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes.
I would like to remain anonymous, and I am a citizen of Saline. I am a victim of domestic violence and abuse. I've never, ever stood up for myself until more recently, and it started with me being afraid of being in my own home. And so I got in my car, and I found myself in the parking lot over here. And from there, I'll just look at everybody, and from there, I came to here. And it felt like an elephant, the weight of every step walking into this building. And when I walked in, and that woman dispatcher was there, and with her empathy and her kindness and her grace, I almost turned around and walked out of here. And I just want to say that first, the time she spent with me between answering her calls and doing her job, just her really not making me leave this place, but keeping me here, bringing a police officer to talk to. And honestly, in that moment, I didn't want to talk to a male. And when the male officer I said, can I just talk to her? Well, she's obviously working, being our local dispatcher. And so I can't talk to her. Then he suggested I speak to the police chief. And at that point, I'm in tears and I'm ready to walk out of here. And I said, well, what is the difference? And he said, well, ma'am, our police chief is a woman. And I said, sir, I'll take that cup of coffee. I went into that office and I told a story of multiple years of abuse, stuff that I've held in for a very long time. And my beginning, and it's very fresh, of my success with my survival for my backbone and sticking up for myself started in this building with that female dispatcher. And when I heard about this, it saddened me because not only did it, yes, I've heard of Safe House, but it was the motivation, it was the empathy, it was the heart I felt from the people here that motivated me even more so to help myself. And with all the other resources to continue to help myself. And here I am, very shy, and yes, I remain anonymous, but I would be very dissatisfied and sad if someone in my situation who felt like she had to leave her house, didn't want to go wander Walmart because she felt unsafe to be home, found herself in this parking lot, found some universal spirit to get my butt into here and to continue to stay. It started with that woman in that face right there. So I understand finances are finances. We all have them. But please consider my one small story. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. That took a lot of courage. Appreciate that very much. There are additional comments this evening. Please.
Thank you for this opportunity. First of all, 3 minutes is not nearly enough time. My name's Don Terry. I'm not a resident of the city, but I have a 50-year career in law enforcement. I spent 15 years in road patrol with a local dispatch. I spent 15 years in an administrative position as a budget developer and manager, which included dispatch center. And I spent 13 years here for the city of Saline as an emergency service police department dispatcher, from which I then retired. I say that only to hopefully give some credence to my opinion. And I'd like to talk about the relationship between the officers and the dispatch. Because in a local dispatch, it's a personal relationship. You're not receiving dispatch services from a bodiless voice. You're receiving dispatch from someone you know and who knows you. And given human nature, the fact that you know the people you're dealing with on a personal level creates a heightened focus and heightened awareness of their situation. For me, that translates to an officer safety issue. And that's the biggest focus I have in the consideration you have of transferring over to Metro Dispatch. By my own experience, knowing the officers and their skill set that I was dispatching to certain types of calls, could send the officer who was most likely to create the most positive outcome for the citizenry, not just for the officer's ease of handling it. I don't believe you're going to be able to have that same interpersonal relationship in a Metro Dispatch situation. I'd also like, I guess, to ask the question, there was an article in MLive in December, I believe, that referred to the city of Ann Arbor revisiting their decision to be a part of Metro Dispatch. I have not heard anything about that since, but I guess that's a question I'd like to have answered here. And for future discussions, if there are a number of recommendations, as having been a budget manager, that I would make to City Council in the questions they ask of the Metro Dispatch people and their management. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Do our guests from Metro Dispatch have a response to a statement or article that Mr. Terry read in the Ann Arbor paper regarding Ann Arbor's desire or Ann Arbor's interest in looking at bringing back dispatch services in-house?
I'm aware of the same article, and Ann Arbor just signed their one-year extension that brings us through June of 2024. They have not approached myself at all, anything to the contrary.
Thank you for that, Michelle. Additional citizen comments? Please, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Carol Finkelstein. I am not a citizen of Saline, but I am a resident of York Township. This is my son. His name is Edward. He does go to daycare here every week. We pay $410 weekly for his daycare here. If you have not noticed, I am very pregnant. I am due in about 6 weeks. We will be having a second child coming up, so we will be spending $800 a week in this city. So I do have a valid interest in the city and what goes on. I want better for my son than what I had. I grew up in Britain. The police response time is about a half hour. Not that my father would do illegal things to time it. He would take propane tanks, fill trash bags up with the propane, tie them off, set them off in the field, and blow him up with a shotgun. And he would time the police. Take about a half hour from Adrian. So I purposely moved my family where there'd be better response time. And I was hoping for more prosperous life for my family. My concern is safety. I'm a registered nurse. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of mention about fear-mongering tonight. My name is Carol Finkelstein. I am that fear-monger that you keep referring to. I am a registered nurse at the Center for Forensic Psychiatry in Saline. I'm an American Heart Associated instructor. I've only had to do CPR once. That lady made it for me. She did not make it 2 days later. So when I was giving the statistics on Facebook on the faster an AED is used on a person, the better the survival rates, I'm not just some random person trying to spill fear. I'm trying to save my son. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Excuse me.
That stays there, thank you.
Any additional comments this evening? You will have 3 minutes. Please, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Sandy Wood. I'm a retired dispatcher from Saline of about 14 years. I had lots of things I wanted to say, but I changed my mind as I listened to all the people talk. And I think I'm with this young lady here that said that we do have compassion for people who come to the station. We do reach out to them. I had people that I cried with in my years here, people I supported, people I paid their tickets for. We went way out of our way to help people in the city. It's very important that these dispatchers, they know the citizens of Saline, they know the streets, they know their officers. I brought officers in off the road occasionally when they knew they had a bad day, just to sit with me and talk with me, to calm them down and get them back out on the road. And as Don Terry said, we are very supportive of our officers here. And I like the county. I don't want to say anything bad about the sheriff's department, but I know they're overworked there and that they will not have the compassion that we have for the citizens of Saline. And I do live in Tecumseh, so I've been coming in here a couple days a week, still volunteering for the last couple years. So I do have a heart for Saline and a love for the people that live here, and I know a lot of these people. So I appreciate your time, and I want you to really rethink about this, that you're going to lose this with Saline. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate your comments. Any additional comments or questions this evening? Please, we welcome your thoughts.
Mayor, I just will say this probably need to be our last comment, given the time.
Okay, yep.
I'll make it really fast.
No problem.
I'm Diane. I'm a member of the community, and I grew up here, went to school here. I'm an original Saline Hornet. I heard you talk about operations, efficiency, and all of that, and, and you heard all the stories and everyone's comments, and it's really about safety and security. And I think the citizens, and Mary, you said it, we'd really like a say in it, to contribute money, if it's a money thing, I mean, safety and security, it's invaluable. So I really hate to see or lose what we currently have, because this is a phenomenal community to live in right now. I also wanted to ask, I guess my one question is there any way to get feedback from current officers or dispatchers that are currently here, if we want to have a conversation and just see what they think? Is that possible?
I'll let, if that's, my apologies. Did you have any other remarks or questions
Nope.
you wanted to share? No?
That's
Okay.
it.
Then if that's it, I will let staff, maybe specifically the police chief, respond to that.
So your question was if you could have a conversation with some of the officers and dispatchers?
On this plan, or get their feedback or thoughts, or?
I mean, you heard from some of them tonight, but, I mean, we're open anytime if you wanted to stop up when they're not busy. I don't see any problem with you coming in and having a conversation with the dispatcher, and if there's an officer in, or you can come speak with me as well.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Diane. We need to wrap it up, unfortunately. We appreciate your time.
One quick question.
Sure. Can you come to the mic though, real quick? Yep, we'll make it the last one.
Hi, I'm Jim Tiemann. I am a Saline citizen. I live here. I worked in the Ann Arbor PD with quite a few of the officers you see sitting behind you. My only question I haven't heard addressed tonight is what the chief's position is on this dispatch, whether it's going to stay or go, and how it all fits in with the mayor meeting with a sheriff's candidate talking about the future of policing for Saline 2 days from now. Somehow I think it's all intertwined here on the big plan. So that's my question, Chief.
Okay.
You want to take?
I can take
Okay,
that.
go.
So, I mean, ultimately, it's a policy decision that will be made by council, whether or not we move to Metro Dispatch. I understand it's a sensitive topic. I, too, am very attached to all of the dispatchers and the police officers. We're still going to have to staff the front. So what that looks like right now, I'm not sure if we were to move to Metro Dispatch. But public safety is my first priority for the residents in the community. And it's also my job to be fiscally responsible. So we're just in the beginning stages of these discussions. What I can tell you is, as the chief of police, I have heard that this is about the third time we've been down this road. And I think it's very important at this point in time for all of our staff, for the morale at the police department, to make a swift decision on what we're going to do, but to put some thought into it. And, we just went through contract negotiations, and pay and benefits were the top two issues we were at the top priority of some of the officers and the communications officers as well. And if they have an opportunity to move to Metro, I mean, it's no secret, it's been posted on Facebook, Metro Dispatch can offer what Saline can't right now. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's where I stand right now, and ultimately, it's not my decision, but I also have to concern myself as a chief of police with public safety, with our staff, and being fiscally responsible.
And Jim, to your other question, and I appreciate that, and I freely admit the optics on that might not be ideal, but I can tell you because part of my reputation and part of my approach is to always tell my constituents the truth, even when it's difficult, even when they might not want to hear it. I know Mr. Jackson, who's a candidate for sheriff for more than 20 years. He and I met, I believe, for lunch in the fourth quarter of 2021, and he shared with me that he would be a candidate for sheriff. And at that time, I told him that he would have my support. I would campaign for him or against him, whatever was more helpful. And so at that time, I made a commitment to help him with his campaign. He had followed up with me, or his campaign rather, had followed up with me probably a month ago and said, would you be willing to co-host a coffee hour with him in Pittsfield Township? And I said I would be delighted to do so. But I can tell you with 100% certainty, what we're discussing tonight has absolutely nothing to do with that event on Saturday. Bernard, real quick, and then we're gonna wrap it up, okay?
Yeah. Third time, huh, Chief? Seems like a Sisyphean task, huh? You keep pushing the rock up and it rolls back on you. You know what? I spent a lot of time over the last 2 weeks talking to various officers off the record, on the record, and the dispatchers. And you know what? I have to tell you that, you know, as a multidisciplined engineer, my whole life was based on building efficiency and containing cost. I am strongly against sending the dispatch out to a central organization. It's a lot like when Ford Motor Company decided to have their chips made in China. Well, how did that stand? Well, they jobbed it out, then they tried to pull it back, and then they can't get it back. You have a system in place that needs oil. It's broken. It can be fixed. All of your dispatchers have a unique relationship with each and every patrolman. I'm assuming they know their inflection in their voice, the tone of their voice, and I'm assuming that they probably even have a secret languages that they talk to each other. I mean, I implore all of you city council to fully fund the police department. Time and time again, I've seen Larry Searles come in here asking for another $100,000 for a toy that I know damn well that it can be jobbed out at a whole less of a cost. Now he's looking for $100,000 for a hydrophobic anti-surfactant chemical to make your effluent slide more, you know, negate the effects of gravity and slide down the pipes. Don't tell me that's a bunch of crap. You know, I've seen you gave him $100,000 for a fiber optic snake that I knew damn well that he could have went and just rented that. I mean, you don't have the budget to buy toys. You need people. You need to fully fund the Saline Police Department. Also, another thing that I've heard is that there appears to be a vast crevasse down the center of that aisle between city management and the police department. If you want an agency to run efficiently, you have to negate those factors. You know, I urge you to fully fund the police department, to give the police department, I understand they have a fair wage, but you don't give them the bells and whistles they need. You don't give them the sign-on bonus. They don't give them other things in order to make them want to come to work for Saline. Well, you know what? There's nothing you could do, you know, so I'm only speaking from what I'm talking. I was going to dress up in a suit and impress Brian, try to look like Brian and use a lot of big words. Sisyphean, that's pretty good, right? You know, anyway, I just want to say that I think that you are trading a minor problem for a larger disaster by going to the thing. It's easier to fix what's broken locally and to insert some energy into it.
I have to keep everybody 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick.
I just have.
We're getting down here at 7, we're already 15 past.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I just have 3 questions I was hoping I could get answered. 2 for the city manager or police department. One is, we were talking about $350,000 in savings. Does that include somebody working the desk? And what's the estimated, and does that include the cost of going to Washtenaw Metro Dispatch? Like, what is the total how many hours are we talking about somebody working the desk? So what are we looking at in terms of the money here? Second question is, and also in terms of the money, in 2017, according to Plant Moran, the city's police department budget was $1.7 million. It was over $3 million in the last budget I saw. What's going on that the budget increased almost 80%? I'm not exactly sure. And my last question, selfishly, is for Metro Dispatch. If we do go to dispatch, I listen to Broadcastify, I listen to my scanner, and I'm able to track what's going on sometimes when I have the time. And I've listened to what the dispatchers and the way they work with the police department and Sergeant Bolter and everybody, and they do a great job. It's amazing to listen to. And I can't listen to Washtenaw Metro Dispatch because it's just nonstop. Anyway, my question is for you. You mentioned talk groups, and can you separate that talk group out, or will it be on the scanner? Will it be part of Washtenaw Metro Dispatch West and just part of everything that happens on the western half of Washtenaw County?
All right, so let's do this to wrap it up. City Manager O'Toole, you can respond to Mr. Longmore's first two questions, or perhaps City Treasurer would be best equipped to do that. I would also ask that you maybe take 30 seconds as in an obligatory way. Mr. Miller made reference to incentives and benefits that are offered to our police officers. Perhaps you could give a very high-level overview of 3 or 4 important changes that were made in their recently approved contract, and then we'll turn it over to Metro Dispatch to address Mr. Longmore's last question. So, City Treasurer Cole, are you starting, or is the City Manager?
You can start with the answer to them.
Yes, so the cost that City Manager O'Toole had referenced, the 300 to 350, is the actual cost of the department. That's a very bare bones cost. We need to really finalize all the details with Washtenaw County in order for us to be able to tell you how much money it would actually save. In addition to City Council making decisions about how we're going to staff and what it's going to look like if dispatch was outsourced.
Is there an estimate? There must be some estimate.
Yes. Yes, the estimate that she gave to you is our costs here at the City of Saline.
What's the savings cost?
Whoa, folks. No, we're not going to do this.
So in response to the contract that the city just entered into with the police officers unit, the city did bring back a hybrid retirement plan, so a true defined benefit, defined contribution plan for anyone who stays with the city 6 years. They're fully vested in that. That's a new program all of our new hires, as well as any existing officers, will be able to opt into. I can also say that the city of Saline continues to be really towards the top end of the scale across the state of Michigan in terms of officer pay. I can't say that we're quite as competitive when it comes to communications operator or dispatcher pay, unfortunately.
Our friends from Metro, I think final question.
Is there an estimate on what the savings will be once you pay them and pay your people to work at the desk who are going to replace the dispatch desk? Like you're going to have somebody at the desk, maybe a community liaison. Is there an estimate?
It depends entirely on council's direction in terms of the hours of operation for the desk, whether we need 1 person, 2 people, full-time, part-time, and certainly what ends up being the final contract cost with the county. So no, we're not prepared to commit to any specific range because we don't have those numbers and we don't have that direction from council. And again, we're about a year out, even if the decisions were finalized today from that transition. So this is very still preliminary to be asking for detailed information.
And as far as the radio channels go, that's to be determined as well. Based on how much radio traffic Saline has now, we could guess that they might be on Metro West, but that's kind of to be determined. It's something we look at with contract partners as far as push-to-talk activations and what kind of radio workload they'd add to the channel.
Okay, appreciate it.
Very good. Folks, I want to thank you for attending. Several of us on City Council and staff will stick around if you have questions or concerns. And if you have additional thoughts regarding this matter, you're always welcome to reach out to city staff or City Council as a whole. And the best way to contact us would be via email, which is citycouncil@cityofsaline.org. Thank you very much.